this is prior to the wedding, and we were coming downstairs.
That is such a beautiful picture. I love that. What did you two love about each other?
Well, one thing that I liked about Jim was he was so kind to everyone. It didn't matter if a person was a PhD or had no education. He was just so kind to everybody.
I love that. That's so beautiful. What about you, Dad?
Oh, golly.
So many things.
There were so many things. It's hard to pick one. She was seeking to become herself, seeking light and a way of life that would be meaningful, helpful, and fulfilling what God willed. She always had a beautiful smile, not only with her face, but with her heart.
It's beautiful.
And she was very kind.
Nice. Was there something about Mom that made her stand out against all these other people? Because I'm sure a lot of people had crushes on both of you. Was there something about Mom that drew you to her more than your many other options you probably had?
It was something unknown, really. I couldn't take my eyes off of her. And indeed, when I first went to a seminar on the new era that mankind is now in, like I say, I couldn't take my eyes off of her. And that song from South Pacific kept going through my mind. Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger. You may see a stranger across the crowded room. And somehow you know even then, that somehow you'll find her and meet her again. Some can explain it, some can tell you why. Fools can explain it, wise men never try. So it was. Couldn't take my eyes off her.
That's beautiful. You guys were meant to be. It really seems like.
There was something beautiful about her, and I had to find out where it was coming from.
Wow.
How to make it my own.
When you all were dating, like in today's times, a lot of times people feel like they have to kind of play games or that they can't show all of their feelings. When you all were dating, were you able to share your feelings, like how you felt in that song? Or did you kind of hold back a little bit because, maybe I would imagine sometimes those kinds of feelings could overwhelm some guys.
It didn't take very long before I let her know that I had very strong feelings for her. And that it could happen that we would be married.
That's nice. Mom, when he shared those kinds of feelings with you, did you understand what he meant? Did you, did you understand that he was really serious and he thought, I'm really thinking of you as a marriage partner?
Well, I did, because his mother and father lived in Washington State, and he wanted me to meet his mother and father over the telephone. And I met his mother over the telephone, and we had several conversations. We got to know each other very well over the telephone. So I knew Jim's intentions were pure.
You could feel it.
I could feel it.
Wow. So bring me back to the night you first met. Tell me a little bit about that story, if you would.
Well, the night that we first met, I wasn't planning on going to the Baha'u'llah, the New Era class. I usually went every Wednesday. But my landlady's daughter, she said to me, are you going to your Baha'i meeting tonight? I said, no, I don't think so. And she said, oh, you should go. Tonight might be the night you meet your husband. And I said, well, if I haven't met him in all these years, I don't think the night is going to make any difference. But I went upstairs and I took a shower and I did feel better. I felt revived. So I got dressed and I went to the meeting, and I was standing there listening to some music when I heard somebody come up the steps. And then they didn't come in the door, so I proceeded to listen to the music. And then have you ever had somebody just stare at you? Feel like somebody's staring at you?
Yes.
And I felt somebody staring at me, and I turned around and our eyes met. And I really felt something. Like in these storybooks, the woman feels something that goes all through her body. And I said, I wonder if this is going to be my husband. Anyway, I introduced myself to him, and that was the way we first met. He told me that he had been traveling cross country, and this was his first night attending a Baha'i meeting in Washington, D.C.
It was a class on the new era, and indeed it was the beginning of a new era for me. Having met my wife and having direct encounter with the Baha'i faith, which I had studied for several years prior to that and fell in love with.
Wow, so many exciting changes in your life, it sounds like. And how long had you been in Washington, D.C. when you met Mom? Had you just moved there?
I had just retired from 5 years of teaching and took the civil service exam, came to Washington, D.C. to take the civil service exam. And then what? I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry.
And then you, was this your first Baha'i gathering that you went to in Washington,
Oh,
D.C.?
yes, I was going to say, when I was in the Air Force for 3 years, I was studying all the religions of the world.
Wow.
I left college because my spiritual side wasn't being fed. It wasn't enabling me to identify who I was or how to become what potentials I might have. And so I said, I'll study the religions. So I left college at the end of my second year, joined the Air Force. After 3 years, I got orders to go to Goose Bay, Labrador on the east coast of Canada in the province of Newfoundland. And just after I got there, they were offering courses and I took a course in German, a course in philosophy. Philosophy course required a term paper. So I was trying to find a philosopher to write my paper on. So I got bored with that and pulled a little red book off the shelf, and it was called Baha'u'llah and the New Era, written by a Scotsman named Esselmont, who was serving at the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel.
Ooh,
And indeed, I couldn't put his book down after I opened it up. I felt like indeed I was finding the answer to the beginning at the ending of my spiritual odyssey. But it wasn't the end, it was the beginning of my real spiritual odyssey, and I studied the Baha'i faith for several years thereafter. And anyway, eventually, after I retired from teaching, I came to Washington, D.C. and continued to be a Baha'i. And
was this your first Baha'i gathering at the D.C. Baha'i Center?
no.
Okay.
I had encountered Baha'is after I had gotten my honorable discharge from the Air Force.
Okay.
And I met Baha'is in Missoula, Montana.
Right.
And then when I was a teacher in the Aleutian Islands on the island of Adak, on a naval base as a civilian. And I met people there on that naval base that later on I met again at the Baha'i Summer School in Elliott, Maine,
Oh, neat.
and they were living at that time, years later, in Virginia. And he was serving as a physician for handicapped people who had lost a limb. And he manufactured limbs.
Oh, wow.
And he also started a medical school there in Africa.
You've met so many amazing, interesting people in your journeys of life. And I'm so happy
And it never
lucky
stops. You
you
keep
two found each
meeting
other.
people who are special, who are seeking light and truth and justice and trying to become themselves. And everyone I met, I was impressed by. They weren't perfect people, but we were trying to become more perfect, as indeed my wife and I are.
What was it about Mom? I mean, you've met so many amazing people, men and women, it sounds like, all along your life's journeys. What was it about Mom that made you realize this is the one for me? This is the wife for me?
Because she was seeking, always seeking, to identify truth and fairness and to become increasingly herself and try to find ways to make a difference.
So it sounds like
And indeed she did that. In many ways she can tell you about that herself.
Wow. Mom, it sounds like from what Dad's saying, you really had a growth mindset spiritually, that you weren't one of those people that are stuck in their ways and they're like, well, I am what I am and that's how I'm gonna be. She had a growth mindset and wanted to keep growing spiritually and together, it sounded like, as well.
Yes. So every day is another growth opportunity.
It is.
It's not always fun, it's not always perfect, but it's step by step and little by little and higher in the mountain of life while you're trying to go through the valley of knowledge, valley of search, the valley of knowledge, and the valley of love, and that's where we are now, the valley of love, mankind. At the beginning of our adulthood, at age 19.
That's so true. It reminds me of a saying that Danielle, my sister, and I learned from our Persian friends that are part of our one human family. The saying is, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's ruz be ruz, little by little, day by day. And so what you're saying reminds me a lot of that.
And we try to increasingly discover how to be unified as individuals and as members of society. Yeah.
That's so true. Mom, is there any more you'd like to add to this part here?
Well, when I met Jim, I felt that Jim was just a very nice person. And I just felt that he just really knew how to talk to. He loved to talk. And he just really had that personality where he just really enjoyed talking to everyone.
Yes, he really connects with
He does
all people.
all people.
It's because I felt that I, like everyone in the world, is a student and teacher in the University of Life, ever becoming better and better, and we become like what's in front of us, and so I try to be a better person in front of whoever I may encounter.
I love that. Me too. Such a great couple. I'm so happy you found each other.
She had some